I'm Leah Wheatholter, and this is the Data Sleuth Podcast. In this season of the Data Sleuth Podcast, From Numbers to Narratives, our host, Justin Burns, the Director of Operations for Workman Forensics, discusses a broad range of forensic accounting cases, from embezzlement to money laundering, fraud against family members, and so much more. In each episode, he's joined by an industry expert to help tell the story behind the numbers.
Thank you, Leah. I'm Justin Burns, and I'll be your host for this season of the Data Sleuth Podcast. From numbers to narratives. Together with some amazing guests, we'll take you beyond the spreadsheets and into the human side of fraud investigations. Let's dive into today's episode. In today's episode of the Data Sleuth Podcast, we will hear some investigation stories from Chris Quick. Chris has 30 years of federal investigative experience, mostly with the FBI. He has worked as a special investigator with the FBI, supervised the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, acted as the FBI Terrorist Finance Coordinator for the state of South Carolina, and completed terrorism training with the Israeli Security Agency in Tel Aviv, Israel. After leaving the FBI, Chris started Quick Group LLC, where he continues to help clients by providing financial investigation services. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining me today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. So, Chris, you have 30 years of experience working on federal investigations, mostly into white-collar crime and complex financial crime investigations. You've conducted investigations ranging from securities investment fraud, corporate accounting fraud, bank fraud, insurance fraud, healthcare fraud, and money laundering. You've investigated a lot. So I know you have some great stories from your experience investigating each of those types of cases, and I know I and our listeners can't wait to hear about them. So first, as part of your work with the FBI, you were detailed to different countries around the world. Can you talk to us about what it's like performing financial investigations in other countries and how that works?
Sure. A lot of people don't realize that the FBI has a presence in foreign countries, and in the Bureau, they're called legat offices. And there's actually agents assigned to the legat offices that are based in different countries, usually assigned to the U.S. embassies or consulate offices. And the purpose of that is so when the Bureau has a need for an investigation done in another part of the country or another country, we will contact our legat office and give them the details. Can you, for example, if we need some accounting records, investment records in London, we'll contact our legat office in London, and they will hopefully get that information from us by working with like Scotland Yard, make a request to Scotland Yard, and they have the liaison with Scotland Yard. And likewise, sometimes those foreign countries will need an investigation done in the United States. So they'll reach out to the legat partner in that country and say, hey, can you get this from us in the United States? So there's a liaison and back and forth with the various investigative agencies in that country and agencies. So back in one of my foreign details, and it was a temporary duty assignment that was for like 60 days. And we had a request from our legat office in Prague, Czech Republic. We need someone with some money laundering, white collar experience on a case that the national police in the Czech Republic was investigating. And it was a case involving government officials, including the prime minister of the Czech Republic. And the allegations were it was almost like a play-to-play scheme, getting government contracts, and there'd be fixers and then kickbacks to the government officials that award these contracts. And of course, the contracts were overinflated. That's how the kickbacks and profits were kicked back to the government officials. And so I went there for 60 days and assisted the national police on that. And the reason why is that the money laundering aspect of the case was when these overinflated contracts and kickbacks were going back to government officials, they were usually being handled through other entities in tax haven countries and tax haven banks. And a lot of those entities originated in the United States as Delaware corporations. So I did a lot of tracing of who was behind the Delaware corporations, and then when these Delaware corporations formed bank accounts in the foreign countries. So it was a lot of tracing of ownership records to the bank accounts, and then getting the bank accounts or the financial records from those banks. And it resulted in, a few months after I left, that the National Police ended up conducting search warrants and on government offices and at banks and individuals' homes to gather additional evidence. And that happened in like June 2013. And when that occurred, it was a big uproar in the Czech Republic, in Prague, and allegations involving the prime minister, of course. So it was big news. He eventually ended up resigning. The prime minister did, and then about a year later, he and other individuals were indicted by the police or the authorities in the Czech Republic. And I came back to the States, of course, and went on to other cases. But then eventually, I guess a few years ago, that case lasted a while, I guess, in the judicial system there. And some of these officials and the prime minister were convicted of these crimes.
Oh, wow. Have they been sentenced? Are they serving time? Is this...
They were sentenced. I did some research on that online and news articles. There were fines, and they got some suspended sentences. And reading the articles, the judge felt that because the case dragged on so long from the time they were indicted till they finally were convicted, felt the fines and suspended sentences were appropriate.
So,
and that's the thing. When we work with these foreign countries, we're dealing with their laws, and we're at their mercy and their constitution and laws. And so, similar to the United States, but sometimes different, and sometimes the cases drag on.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're working with countries or the FBI works with countries that we have good relationships with, like the Czech Republic, for example. But you also mentioned that they had, accounts in tax haven countries. Were you able to get the information from those tax haven countries? Were they brought in on this? Did they cooperate?
Well, again, tax haven countries are difficult,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, if you get additional information about the ownership of the tax haven accounts, and I suspect that's why the Czech police did the search warrants to link. Sometimes you have to link those bank accounts with actual physical documents that these individuals would have, and I'm not sure, because again, I was only there for 60 days,
Right.
and other agents came in and followed up. But so I don't know how successful they were in getting the documents out of the tax haven countries, but that's always difficult, as you know,
Yeah.
because of the secrecy laws of tax havens countries.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's when you said that part of the story, that's where I was like, oh, well, did it, how were you able to get those? Did that work out? So this was a collaborative effort. They requested the FBI's assistance, and you guys provided it. So is this something that happens a lot, or is this an everyday thing that the FBI does?
I want to say it's an everyday thing, but it's fairly common. There's a back and forth, because a lot of times, as I mentioned before, the United States will want something out of those countries for our investigations in the United States, so we'll make requests of them. And this one, the Czech Republic requested us because their police unit that did it was a unit that it was doing organized crime, and my understanding is they sort of stumbled upon this case with government officials while they were doing the organized crime aspect of it, and uh, it started off with the prime minister's mistress. He was
Oh,
married at the time. Uh, Actually used the Czech authorities to spy on the wife of the prime minister. It was sort of a soap opera type thing, and as they were doing that investigation, they stumbled upon the play scheme and done that investigation. And my understanding is, that unit was not well versed in money laundering and financial aspects of the case. So that's why, and then with the connection to the Delaware uh, corporations, requested the bureau to come in and help them with it. So it does happen where a foreign country will ask us to assist them in a case. Um, and again, like the legal offices will have, maybe depending on the country, one or two agents assigned to the legal office, and those legal agents may not necessarily have the white collar crime experience or the financial know-withal. So headquarters will send out a directive to all the field offices and say, hey, we're looking for more agents with this experience. Would you be interested in going to the Czech Republic for 60 days to assist in the investigation? And for me, it was a no-brainer because one, I like the foreign travel, and ironically, my grandmother was born in the Czech Republic, so that gave me the opportunity to visit the Czech Republic and go back to her heritage and ethics and background. And I was actually go to the on my off time, go to the small town that she was born in and see where she grew up and things that as a kid she talked about, and I was able to actually experience firsthand.
wow, that's a really cool little added bonus there of getting to
Yes.
experience that. Um,
And,
yeah,
and it was also fascinating working with the police in the Czech Republic because the one officer or investigator I was working with was actually lived there when the Czech Republic was under Soviet rule. So I was able to like talk to him about what it was like when they were controlled by the Soviet Union and how life was in the Czech Republic with the Soviet Union versus in comparison to when they basically became a free economy and a democracy in the Czech Republic.
oh wow, yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, this case, it's got organized crime, it has a cheating spouse, it's got money
Yes,
laundering, it's got a lot of stuff going on here.
yes, but at the end of the day, it was the police didn't want to tolerate corruption,
Yeah.
and then to their credit, it went to the top, and they weren't afraid to investigate it and um, consequences for those involved.
Yeah, I guess with it going so high up, it's kind of politically beneficial to them to bring in someone outside, um, to where it doesn't look like they have any sort of, um, you know, agenda or anything like that.
Well, that's true, but at the end of the day, it's their investigators, their police that have to do the investigation because in the league at offices in the foreign countries, I'm working under those investigators' authority and not the FBI's authority because in theory practically we have no authority. We're there at the host of the country, the host country, and at their mercy, and to follow their rules and their uh, ethics and
Mm.
their customs and their constitution we have to follow.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Um, so, as well as your work overseas with with various offices around the world. You also worked for the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. So what kind of work does a financial investigator do in relation to counterterrorism work?
Well, for a number of years, I was assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. In fact, I was in charge of the Joint Terrorism Task Force in our office in Charleston, South Carolina. And it was made up of, other federal agencies, state and local officials. And part of my duties on the task force, I was the Joint Terrorism Finance Coordinator for the state. And I was in the Columbia division, and Columbia covers the whole state of South Carolina. And so every month, headquarters would push out to me in Columbia, my division in Charleston. I would get CTR reports, cash transaction reports, suspicious activity reports filed by the banks of individuals that may have ties or suspected ties to terrorism. So I would take those CTRs and SARs, and with the help of the task force, we would do research on the individuals and the entities that were doing these suspicious bank transactions. We were trying to connect if these individuals or entities had connections to known terrorists or known terrorist countries. And then sometimes, these were foreign individuals living in the United States, so they had connections to their home countries. So sometimes we would get our legat office involved to get further research of these individuals through mostly Mideastern countries or North African countries, where we were to research these individuals to see if they had ties or connections to terrorism. And then on some occasions, we were able to develop enough that we would open cases and have open cases on those individuals in our area.
So can you talk about how that works? Opening a case and investigating someone. What does that look like?
Well, it involves, if we truly believe that they were involved in terrorism, or it involved getting FISAs, which were under different authority, under terrorism authority, through FISA courts. And basically what's that is wiretaps, where we would, wiretap these individuals to see who they were talking to see if they were involved in terrorists. And the whole idea of doing the wiretaps and physical surveillance of these individuals is to get the evidence to show that they're involved in terrorist activities. And then ultimately, with the evidence we gathered, we would be able to charge them with using material support of terrorism. Was a charge we would likely use on a lot of those cases. And hopefully prevent them being involved in any terrorist activities that might be, committed on the home front in the United States. People don't realize, they think of terrorism in New York, LA, major cities, but the Joint Terrorism Task Forces are in every state, every division of the FBI, and there are people that are in everyday small USA cities and towns that could be involved in terrorism. So the no stone left unturned philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, that was, forgive me, but that was kind of my initial thought when you said South Carolina. And apologies to South Carolina listeners, but I was like, really? South Carolina? I mean, because I was kind of thinking like it's in those big, big cities, big metro centers that have, either house like DC or lots of the country's government, or New York, our financial, base, things like that. But
the thing you got to realize is every state has major universities, colleges, a lot of these individuals will come here as students, and sort of to get a foothold or an establishment in the United States. So uh, there's a couple universities located in Charleston. University of South Carolina is 100 miles away, and so yeah, it happens everywhere. And then there's think of tech research companies, and and they're everywhere, and people are trying to get associated with those tech companies, and either as targets for terrorist activities, or get involved with tech companies to further their terrorist activities.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, that's something that I'm certainly guilty of thinking of. It would be kind of constrained to the larger cities, but yeah, you're right about these research institutions and colleges and things like that. I mean, my wife is a professor at a university here, and they have a huge engineering program at this school, and they have tons and tons of foreign students that come in, and it's part of the deal is they learn at this engineering school, and then they go back and work in their home countries.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's a really good point.
And then another thing in Charleston, South Carolina, people don't realize, but Boeing set up a plant in Charleston about, I want to say 12, 15 years ago. And all the 787 Dreamliners are assembled in Charleston, South Carolina. So literally, when you're going to the airport in Charleston, South Carolina, either going to the airport, leaving, you will see a row of all the 787 Dreamliners that are manufactured here, and they're from everywhere. I mean, all foreign airlines. So they originate in Charleston, and so again, that's another target of opportunity potentially for terrorists.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's all great points and very insightful. That's amazing, and I think now's a good time to take our ad break.
Ready to unravel the mysteries in your data? Well, say hello to Data Sleuth's latest offering, the ultimate data processing and analysis tool designed specifically for forensic accounting practitioners, law enforcement, and attorneys. So imagine processing all of your bank and credit card statements effortlessly. What if you could spot anomalies in minutes and clearly see the flow of funds, freeing up your time for the work you actually enjoy? With our team supporting you behind the scenes, you can focus on your cases while we help you get more done faster. Data Sleuth is proud to introduce the revolutionary Data Sleuth dashboard for professionals. Gain instant access to our powerful source and use of funds report, which flags hidden or related bank accounts, potential assets, loans, and connections to entities or individuals. Plus, explore our interesting data findings report, uncovering outliers, recurring transactions, even dollar payments, and more, all designed to help you spot what others might miss. Our holistic data-driven approach ensures you'll never miss a critical insight. With our service, you'll gain accurate reconciliations of transactions to bank statements, cleaned and standardized payee data for easier, faster analysis, smart anomaly detection that flags suspicious outliers and trends, transparent fixed fee pricing so you know the value up front. These advanced data services are now available for a fixed fee based on the number of transactions processed, making it easy and straightforward for you to access this vital tool. Are you ready to take the first step towards uncovering the truth and solving mysteries efficiently? Schedule a demo today at datasleuth.com/pro.
Okay, and we're back from our break with Chris Quick. He's talking about the various investigations that he has worked throughout his career. So, Chris, in the first half, we talked about the investigations and types of investigations you worked during your 30 years with the FBI. So you have since left government employment and you've started your own practice, Quick Group. What types of cases are you working on now?
So we do all types of investigative work, but when it comes to the financial side of it, one one type of cases we were involved with is either individuals or businesses will come to us that have been victims of fraud or have been defrauded, and they'll say, "Hey, Chris, can you find out?" Either they know who it was or they don't know who it was, but can you find the identity of the individual or individuals that defrauded me, and can you quantify the amount?
Right.
And they're looking for me to hopefully find that out and get their money back, which is sort of sometimes a tall tale when a fraud occurs, because But anyway, in a lot of those cases, what I'm able to do is identify the individuals, quantify the fraud. And in a lot of cases, I have actually done a report, like if I was an FBI agent, and I'll refer it to the FBI or to other state agencies to do further investigation, because they're going to have more resources and more. And we've had a lot of cases, I would say 4 or 5, that we've referred to the FBI or state authorities, and they've picked them up and ran with them and done further investigations, which resulted in indictments of those individuals.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think you touched on something there with the recoveries. People aren't usually stealing money to put it in a savings account. They're spending.
No.
So,
my for the Bureau and what I'm doing now is they're spending the money, high lifestyle. I mean, you'll be lucky if maybe they defrauded enough people and enough money that they're putting it away. But then, even then, they're hiding those assets to prevent recovery of those assets that they've stolen. Right. But you're right. It's a lot of it's just high lifestyle, and that money's gone, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So the next best thing is to get a criminal prosecution and hopefully put them in jail to pay for the crimes and prevent them from furthering other frauds on other people. And then on the flip side of it, I get a lot of cases from defense attorneys that'll call me and say, "Chris, my client's being investigated by the FBI or the IRS, and can you come in and talk to my client, and let's look and see if they really are involved in this activity that they're being investigated for." And sometimes we've had success where they weren't involved in criminal activity, but the optics look bad, and we're able to find other evidence that they weren't involved in a crime. Although sometimes some of the clients were involved in a crime, and in that case, I would present what I found in the evidence to the attorney, and then they would likely let's get the clients in front of the prosecutors to work out a deal so we can minimize their exposure to criminal sentencing. And part of that thing is hopefully recovering some of that money so they get a lighter sentence or a cooperation agreement that'll look favorably to them. So I've done a couple of those cases too. And then get a lot of cases involving civil cases, just basic, where company A is suing company B because company B owes them money, and so the attorneys will say, "Chris, can you do the financial analysis and see if they really owe this money, and who's responsible for that?" So those are strictly civil cases, and sometimes we'll do damage assessments, that they're out X amount of money and their due interest, and we'll do calculations to give to the attorneys and work that out in the civil cases. But then a lot of, I say a lot, but a large majority of cases, we get internal corporate investigations where companies will come to us and say, "We suspect an employee is involved in wrongdoing, or we involve employees involved in embezzlement. Can you come and investigate that for us to quantify the embezzlement or quantify the activity of the employees that are involved so the company can take appropriate action?"
Okay. So those are cases where I guess you get both, like you mentioned earlier. You get cases where they're like, money's leaking out somewhere. Can you identify how? And then you also get ones where they're like, "Oh, we think it's this person. Can you can you quantify it and give us the results there?
Right, exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, I imagine, with wide variety of cases and then the many of types of cases that you're working, you've got some pretty good stories. Do you have any that you're willing to share with us?
Sure. And I think the one you're getting at is I was actually involved in an internal bank investigation involving Alex Murdaugh, and which I guess some people know. Alex Murdaugh is an attorney in South Carolina that was actually convicted for killing his own son and his wife a few years back. And why he was being investigated for that, the murders, it came out that he was actually stealing or embezzling client funds for people he was representing in his law practice. And so one of my attorney's friends who I worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office, he was out in private practice, and he asked me to join him on the bank investigation, the Palmetto State Bank, where Alex Murdaugh did his personal banking and that the law firm did its banking at, asked us to come in and do an internal investigation when it was determined that he was possibly stealing money. The bank wanted to know, because he used his bank for checking accounts, for the bank's, the law firm's trust account. The bank wanted to know, do any of our employees or does the bank have any exposure in this fraud? So the internal investigation was done at Palmetto State Bank. And it was a bank that had maybe 3 or 4 locations in a rural part of South Carolina. It was a family-owned bank. And the board of directors requested myself and the attorney to come in and do the investigation because they were worried about what exposure or criminal or civil liability that the bank had. So we did it. We started our internal investigation. We interviewed bank employees like you would in any investigation. We looked at the bank account records for Alex Murdaugh's law firm. We looked at his personal bank account and his wife's bank account records that was at Palmetto Federal. And we did notice that it became obvious that one of the vice presidents of the bank was assisting Alex Murdaugh in the banking activities, in the stealing of the funds, clients' funds from the law firms. And so what we noticed in looking at the bank records is Alex Murdaugh got a lot of cashier's checks at the bank. And what he would do is if someone had a lawsuit and he sued someone, usually these were like wrongful death cases, and he would get a settlement for a client, let's say for, and I'm just throwing out, $2 million. Instead of taking the funds and depositing it directly into the firm's IOLTA or trust account, it's called the trust account, and then the money would normally be distributed from the trust account back to the client and expenses and things like that. Instead, he would take the settlement check, deposit it at the bank, and get, let's say, the $2 million. He might divide that up into 2 or 3 different cashier's checks, and only a portion of the settlement from one of those would go into the trust account. So in other words, he would represent to the client, you only got $1 million settlement when in fact they got $2 million. So he kept $1 million for himself and used it for other things. And the reason and how he was able to do it was with these cashier's checks. And so when we were looking at that, we noticed a pattern that was occurring a lot. We had a lot of cashier's checks that was doing this with settlements. And so basically, again, we go back to old-fashioned tracing the money. where did the cashier's checks go and who benefited from the cashier's checks. And we found out that the banker was involved because he authorized these cashier's checks. He had to sign off and say, okay, $2 million settlement check came in. We'll divide that up into 3 cashier's check. 1 cashier's checks for $1 million went here, $1 million went there, and we could show that like a lot of those funds went to Alex's personal bank account, or to his wife's bank account, or to pay for property that he was purchasing, things like that. So yeah, a lot of cashier's checks. We had to document that. And then another thing that we found out from the investigation was that on a lot of these lawsuits that Alex Murdaugh had, it involved, as I stated, wrongful death cases. And some of these wrongful death cases involved minors whose parents were killed in car wrecks or accidents. So Alex would get a settlement from the wrongful death case for millions of dollars and deposit the money at Palmetto State Bank in trust. And the banker, who was Russell Lafitte, was the conservator of those funds. And what we were able to determine from the investigation was that Alex Murdaugh and Russell Lafitte would take loans against those conservator funds and use loans, personal loans that they would take from those. And so what would happen is when these minors became of age, they're expecting the full settlement amount. Well, these loans have to be paid back. Well, guess how the loans were paid back? From other settlements, from other cases, they paid the loan back with those settlements. So it was sort of like a somewhat of a Ponzi scheme or a check kiting scheme. We'll just steal money from other clients and put it back into those accounts. So so I remember doing basically a massive spreadsheet where we could show every transaction, money coming in, money going out, who got it, who benefited from it. And as a result of that investigation, the bank fired Russell Lafitte. And ultimately, the feds came in, the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, and investigated Alex Murdaugh and Russell Lafitte for the fraud that occurred with these transactions. And they were both prosecuted for wire and mail fraud and money laundering.
You led with he got fired, and I was worried. I was like, well, hold on. There's got to be – he had to be more than just fired. But, yeah, he was prosecuted.
Yeah. But to Palmetto State Bank, that's why they wanted us to do the internal investigation. They it was a family-owned bank, and the board of directors, were not going to, like any bank, want to know what was going on. They weren't aware of this. And if anyone in our bank was involved, they wanted to know. So when we gave them results, they fired Russell Lafitte.
Yeah.
But then, the problems didn't stop there, because about the time we did our investigations, the feds were coming in doing their investigation, and they found the same things we did. In fact, I did the attorney I worked with was a former prosecutor, and as we're going through this, we're like, this is like classic money laundering. This is classic bank and wire fraud, like that we investigated when we were, when I was with the FBI and when he was with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yeah, so Lafitte was benefiting through these loans, and I mean, were there kickbacks as well? And
well, he was getting these conservator fees.
Oh yeah.
From all the conservator funds, and then he did get some money from Alex Murdaugh too. For he benefited from money from Alex Murdaugh too. So we were able to determine it was in the indictment when he was indicted. They determined just at Palmetto State Bank alone that the fraud was $3.5 million.
Mm. So forgive me if you've already said it. What was Lafitte's sentence? How much time did he get?
He appealed his sentence, and recently I think he's been sentenced to, I think it's over 7 years in jail.
Okay. Wow. So I believe there's a documentary on either Netflix or Amazon. There's probably multiple out there. Did they reach out to you about this?
No. I mean, as you know, sometimes financial stuff is boring, right? I mean, the more salacious thing was the actual murders, unfortunately, of his
Yeah.
son and wife, and that's what they focused on, and then the stealing of the client funds. But again, my piece of the pie in this case was what happened at Palmetto State Bank, because they're the ones that hired us to determine what happened at our bank.
Yeah, I guess those crimes are more interesting to most people, but I mean, come on, we got to show the accountants some love, give them some script.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. Yeah. No, studying accounting in college, I was just sort of fascinated with money and financial investigations. So I find it very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of it as it's a big puzzle, and you're just trying to see how it all fits together. Yeah,
right.
Figure out what the picture is.
And ultimately, it boils down to, I say this as you are aware, and a lot of accountants and financial investigators know, it's just follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and sometimes it's painstaking because a lot of layers are used, i.e. with Alex Murdoch and Russell Lafitte, cashier's checks. Okay. But there's always a trail. So if you take it by step by step by step, you ultimately could find out who benefited, who got the benefit of the money.
Yeah.
And that's the person usually guilty of the crime.
Yeah. And Chris, these are all amazing stories, and you've done some really interesting stuff throughout your career, and are still doing amazing work. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, there's two ways the listeners can reach out to me. One is through my website, which is quickgroupllc.com. Just Google it; it'll come up. You'll see my photograph there, and other investigators that I have that are involved. Some that are former FBI agents too. Or you can email me, and my email is cquick@quickgroupllc.com.
That's awesome. And we'll put the links to both of those in the show notes for our listeners. Chris, it was great having you. Thank you for coming on our show.
Well, again, thank you for inviting me and then letting me share some of my stories.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Data Sleuth Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review wherever you listen. The Data Sleuth Podcast is a production of Workman Forensics. To learn more about our investigation services and resources, please visit workmanforensics.com.